Welcome to Life, compassionate conversations around living with advanced illness and the ends-of-life journey. This podcast is intended to provide insight and education in how hospice and palliative care services can help patients and families through the ends-of-life journey. It is not intended to replace professional medical advice or diagnoses. We encourage you to seek advice from your physician for questions regarding a medical condition.
Hi, and welcome to Life. I'm your host, Mindy Rice. I have the privilege of being the Director of Development for Hospice and Palliative Care of Iredell County, and we've created this podcast to help take the fear out of hospice and palliative care services, and our hope is to educate the community so that when the time is right in your family for these services that you will be more comfortable picking up the phone and calling us. There's one thing that I am certain of when it comes to our organization is that we have the absolute best nurses. I get to go out into the community all the time, talk about our services, and all the time I hear how amazing you are, and I say, well, it's not me. They don't let me near the patients, is what I usually tell them. But our nurses, CNAs, all the clinical staff that provides direct care are just amazing, and I hear it every single day. Today I am honored to have Andi Winters with us. She is one of our amazing nurses at the Gordon Hospice House here in Statesville, and Andi helps care for patients every single day in the inpatient setting. And why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and your experience and how you came to be a hospice nurse?
It started in my college rotation when I was going through the nursing program. I did 1-day rotation at the Gordon Hospice House, and I instantly knew.
Really?
I know. I've never been more sure of anything in my life as far as my career went. And sure enough, a few weeks later, I was in the ICU, and I saw one of our longtime nurses was down there as a liaison. Mm-hmm. And I went up to her because I didn't know her from a previous job at Iredell. And I said, I'm going to come work with you. And she said, please, we need you. And within 6 months, that's where I was. I graduated, and I was right there. And I've been there ever since. I've been there for about 13 years and knew I did the right thing. That was the best decision.
Wow, that's amazing. Mm-hmm. And all 13 years you have been in the inpatient setting at the Gordon Hospice House, correct?
Yes. Yep.
That's great. So I also hear all the time, I could never do that. I could never work for hospice. It's just too much of an emotional job. What makes it all worth it for you? What is it about end-of-life care that really made you want to go into hospice care?
Well, I started in oncology, so this was kind of just a stepping stone. People ask every single day, family members, they're sitting there with their loved ones, and every day it's, how do you do this?
Right.
But how does anybody do what they do? You know, we're all here for a certain purpose. It's my honor. Sorry.
It's okay.
This all happened the whole time.
This happens.
The end of life should be more peaceful than the beginning, and in fact, that's our goal.
Right.
You know, coming into this world is kind of loud and messy and unexpected, and we try to make it peaceful and calm and just a beautiful journey for the family as well as the patients.
Right. So the Gordon Hospice House, typically our patients are usually about 3 weeks or less to live, typically. They have some symptoms that need to be managed, some pain that's out of control.
That's kind of a fluid time frame
right.
at this time where we are right now. When I first began in hospice, it was 2 weeks or less in the inpatient unit, which is the hospice house. Now we tend to get, things are just a little bit different, but as a general rule, 2 to 3 weeks of life expectancy. A lot of times people come in and for what appears to be end-of-life symptoms, and we get them managed, and they're able to return back home if that's what their goal is. We see so many things every day, but generally 2 weeks or less is where we are.
Right, and our goal is what the goal of the patient and the family is. So if they want to go back home, we'll do everything we can to do that. But a wonderful alternative is a place like the Gordon Hospice House or the S. Mitchell Mack Hospice House in Mooresville, where it's quiet and calm and there's 24-hour care if that's what a patient needs. So for you, what is the hardest part? And do you have any stories of tough situations that you've been in, patients and families?
Yeah. Everyone has their own unique situation. A lot of times you have to really meet family members where they're at. And sometimes they're just not ready.
Right.
And no matter what you do or say can prepare them for that. So we oftentimes have to deal with a lot of anger that gets misdirected in our direction. And I had a conversation a couple weeks ago that sometimes I feel like I absorb their emotions, and so that they can try to find a different emotion, because there's really words don't comfort people more than ever, and more than anything, just a presence, just being quiet sometimes is all you can do, and sitting with them. And they come around, they have to. But yeah, there's one situation that will forever stick in my mind was actually my first year at the Gordon Hospice House. I had a patient with ALS, and he is of sound mind, of course, because that's not what happens when you die from ALS. You don't lose your mind, unfortunately. But he was an MIT professor, and when he first learned that he had ALS, he helped design a little program for himself so that he would be able to communicate until the end.
Wow.
Well, when the end came, he chose to be palliatively sedated and did not wish for his wife to be there. He didn't feel like she would be able to handle it well. So I got to be the one with him.
Wow.
In those last days and hours. And that one I'll never forget.
It sticks with you. Well, and something I hear commonly, too, from our staff, you meet these amazing people and you learn about all these wonderful things that they've done in their life. And it's just, for us, it's like, man, you wish that you had gotten to know them sooner. You just kind of see it in a small, just a snippet of the end of their life. But it is an honor to be able to help even in that short period of time.
Absolutely.
So do you have any heartwarming stories that you wanted to share, or instances where patients or families just moved you and you just would never forget the experience?
One of my favorite things to do is ask all of our elders who come in over 100, what's the most amazing thing you've seen in your lifetime? And every single time the answer is the same, and it's the cell phone. To me, that's just, you've seen the car, you've seen flying, flight, and every one of them, it's a cell phone. So I had a little lady, we were having this conversation, and the whole time, I'm looking at my phone, periodically glancing at my phone. And she said, so, if you don't mind, will you put it away?
Yeah. Well, that's really a unique thing to have, where you can ask somebody that question, and that's interesting that you do that. You could probably write a book, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
about all these stories. So on a more lighthearted note, do you have any embarrassing stories that maybe patients said something funny, or
things I could say on a podcast? They get kind of messy. Embarrassing.
Right, when you're 100 and you're in hospice care, everything goes. You don't have to. You can say whatever you want.
Probably the most embarrassing was this sweet gentleman who had been telling me, I really want you to meet my son. I think you'd be perfect for my son. Over and over again. Remember, I'm married. Well, one day I come in and there's this very handsome gentleman sitting in there. Andi, come in. I want you to meet my son. You're meant to be together.
Oh, my goodness.
And he had not told his son that I was married. And absolutely, no, that was...
that is funny.
I had to backpedal out of the room. Hi. Bye.
Oh, goodness. That is so funny. So on a more serious note, a lot of what we do, and you mentioned palliative sedation already once, a lot of patients and families are very fearful of morphine. What would you tell, or what do you tell families who are of loved ones receiving morphine during their hospice journey to get them to better understand what the use is for, why it's there, why we do it, and maybe take some of that fear away?
That's so difficult. People have they already have their mind made up when they're fearful of things. And morphine is just one of those things that people who don't have a clear understanding of it only understand the negative part.
Right.
So we have so many educational tools at hospice that I can grab, and I always have just as a reference so that I can leave behind after I talk to people. But I always try to just tell them from the medical side exactly what is happening when the morphine starts to work, so that they understand that 90% of the time we give morphine for breathing and not pain. But they have to understand exactly what's happening to understand why we're doing it.
Right.
So I really just using the educational tools and sitting down, and when people feel pressured or like you're going to make them do something, they tend to just immediately, no, and they refuse to listen or understand. Right. So a lot of times I can tell they're not listening and they're not ready to absorb it, so I might wait a day or two and revisit it if I feel like that patient has enough time to, that they can stand to wait. If I don't feel like they're comfortable and the family's not understanding, then I'll try to get the social worker or doctor involved, so that the whole team's with them. The chaplain, our chaplains are even wonderful about being educated on pain and how we manage it.
Right. Well, and, you mentioned waiting a day or two, and one of the amazing things I have always respected about what we do every day is we think of the patient and the family as an extended member of our team. So the conversations and the goals of care, they all have to line up. So in the end, we're going to always honor what that patient wants and do what's best for that patient. But part of that also is providing the education necessary for them to really understand what it is that they're going through. So if a person comes to stay at one of the hospice houses, what's that experience like? Will they get to see their loved ones? Do they get their pets to come in maybe? Can they bring things into their room? What does that kind of look like?
We absolutely 100% want it to be as much as a home environment as can possibly be. We encourage family members are always welcome 24 hours a day, but we encourage them to bring things from home. So if a patient wakes up, that they see their things from home and they feel not so far away. Right. We encourage people to bring their favorite music, maybe movies. There's DVD players and all the televisions. I tell people all the time in lighthearted conversations, if we're able to have them, have your last pizza party.
Right.
Celebrate Christmas in July. Do things that will make them feel like they're not so far from you.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the things that I hear often, a lot of our patients who come to the hospice house are coming from a hospital stay, and it's the quietness and the peacefulness that they get once they are admitted to the hospice house, where in the hospital required to go in and take vitals every so often, and there's bells and whistles, and it's just quiet there, and we're just there to meet their needs and make sure they're comfortable, and so they can be a family again. Both of our hospice houses have nice large dining halls and family rooms and extra spaces that families can be when they need to take a little bit of a break, because it is exhausting. I've personally have been through a death with a loved one. My father died under hospice care in another state, but I did not even clearly understand how exhausting it is to just sit vigil by your loved one as they're dying. So I love that our organization really focuses on taking care of the family too. So also there's some interesting phenomenons that people talk about when someone is dying. Can you talk a little bit about some of those? We see very often, what we call the rally, a burst of energy. We sometimes see family members who, or patients who the nurse feels like should have passed away 3 or 4 days ago and is just hanging on for some reason. Can you talk a little bit about those and kind of your experiences with those and what you've seen?
A rally is typical. It's just that 24 to 48 hours before someone passes, they have this period of wakefulness. Sometimes it lasts a day, sometimes it lasts an hour. That tends to give a lot of family members this false sense of hope, so we really do our best to explain what is happening medically. I had a neat rally experience. This gentleman, after 2 weeks of not speaking, not being awake, not being able to emote, woke up and he wanted a cup of coffee and he wanted to go outside. And so all of our building is designed, every exit opens, all the doors open all the way so that our beds can fit through, so we can take people outside. And we got that cup of coffee, and I told his wife, call everybody in. We're going to go sit outside, because it was a beautiful summer day. And he finished his coffee and he passed outside in his bed.
Oh my goodness.
Birds
amazing.
chirping, breeze blowing, and the family they just couldn't have been more happy. So that was one of those beautiful rally experiences.
Right. It's knowing, I can understand where it would kind of give some families some false hope. But once you do understand what that is, it really is kind of like,
it's a phenomenon.
It's a gift. It's really a gift to your family if you can have one more hour or a day with your loved one. And you all do such an amazing job of educating, and the resources that we provide to patients and families to understand that process, I think, is so incredibly helpful.
Yeah.
We have a Preparing for the Journey Ahead book that we use that really outlines every step of the dying process, and I even used that myself. I took it to Florida with me when my dad was dying, and I was looking back on it all the time, so I know personally really how helpful that is for families.
I reference it constantly. And at the hospice house, the social workers give it out and talk about it. And then the nurses, when we orient them to the room and get them settled, I always, get that back out and say, go ahead and read that, and we can talk about it.
Right, yeah, it's so helpful. How about those that, you get these situations where patients are just hanging on? What experiences have you had with that?
Those experiences are tougher because families get so tired. As you say, it's taxing to just sit, and watch and not over fixate on that breath and that sound, and how often we come in the room, or the fact that family members go days without eating and don't even realize it.
Right.
What was the question?
When the patient might be hanging on.
Okay,
maybe
sorry.
some of the things that we do to try to figure out and navigate that. Who are we waiting on? What are we waiting on?
Sometimes we're waiting on maybe a family member or a friend that the patient hasn't seen or heard, that they may need to go ahead and do that. So we will encourage families, friends, or whatever loved ones are there with the patient to, if they're not able to come, if there's someone you can think of, maybe we can hold the phone to their ear, or maybe now they can FaceTime, which is really neat.
So cool.
Or maybe they just need to be by themselves. Maybe it needs to be a personal, private end of life journey. And that happens a lot. Some people are devastated when they go to the bathroom and they come back and their loved one has left. And, it takes a lot of us, once they're able to relax and absorb what just happened, of saying, this is how it was supposed to be. You weren't supposed to be right there. They didn't want you to be right there.
Yeah.
No one's ever ready, so it's really hard to prepare people.
Right.
But when it's been too long and they're really tired, and we do start encouraging them, go ahead and go home, go to sleep, go eat, tell them goodbye. They know how much you love them. Just kiss them on the cheek, and just so that I always say, don't leave any stone unturned.
Right.
When you leave that room, it could be the last time you leave.
Right. Yeah. I think it really is amazing how every in my experience, it just seems like everybody individually, really in the end, they do it their own way. And so that's always interesting. So we also talk a lot about these like deathbed visions and seeing people that have passed on before. Have you experienced that with patients?
Almost on a daily basis.
Really?
Yeah. We know that we're usually within a 48-hour time frame when people start asking for people who are no longer here.
Wow.
Now, textbook, it'll read 2 weeks, 2 weeks or less. But we tend to see it at hospice even just a couple of days right before. And there's, I would say, over half of the people are always reaching and looking upward.
Wow.
Yeah, that's it. Anyone that you would ever ask in a clinical setting will say, oh, yeah, you're going to constantly see that. And eyes are always open and the hands are always going forward, upward.
Do you find that it brings the family a little bit of comfort in that?
Yeah, especially if they're spiritual in any way.
Yeah, I would imagine that for sure. So what would you wish that people had a better understanding of? And are there any misconceptions that you would want to clear up about what it is that you do every day?
There are definitely areas in our community that lack the understanding of medications, period. So although they would like for us to get them comfortable, keep them comfortable, what that actually entails, some people just don't want us to do. Again, as long as the patient isn't truly suffering, we try to do what the families would like us to do, and that's always a really hard thing to do. Because ultimately, we're treating the family almost as much as we're treating the family, as much as we're treating the patients.
Right. I've experienced that and heard that with some of our nursing staff too over the years. Is we do meet patients where they are, and we want to honor their wishes. And sometimes it's not what you would personally want. And as a clinician, you're trained to heal and trained to comfort and give meds. And so sometimes that can be contradicting of what your own feelings are. But really, in the end, whatever is best for that patient, that family is what we do. Do you have any final thoughts?
I would just encourage anyone to educate themselves on hospice, and if you're able to volunteer or you're lacking anything in your life that you want to do something amazing, that in any capacity, our volunteers do so many amazing things that we welcome anyone and everyone. If you're clinical, we need you. And I really think there's so many people out there that just don't understand the true concept of hospice and what an extraordinary gift it is to be able to work for hospice, that I would encourage anyone to learn about it.
Well, it certainly is your gift. I know that you are meant to do this. I actually saw several weeks back and heard a story of a patient. This is just a snippet of what it is that Andi does every day. Nobody knew that she was looking, but we had a patient who was in some terrible pain, and she had just given the pain meds, but it was going to take some time for those pain meds to kick in, and you had crawled up in bed with that patient and just held her, just waiting for those pain meds to kick in. So
Thanks, Mindy.
Sorry. You are amazing, as well as all of our staff, so thank you so very much. And at this time, we are going to take it over to Dr. Carnes, who's going to talk about hospice myths.
Hi, I'm Dr. Erin Carnes. I'm the Chief Medical Officer with Hospice and Palliative Care of Iredell County. I'm here today to debunk some hospice myths, and our myth today is that choosing hospice means you have to leave your home. So many people believe that hospice is a place, and while we do have specific locations and inpatient units, the vast majority of our patients we treat in their home or wherever they call home. And if it is the preference and goals of the patient and family to remain home, that's our goal as well, so that we can provide the best quality of care in an environment that's comfortable and familiar to our patients.
Thank you, Dr. Carnes. Andi and her team do an amazing job at the Gordon Hospice House, and of course we have the S. Mitchell Mack Hospice House, but we want everybody to know that we provide care in the home every day too, and a lot of people just think that hospice is a place, but it's not necessarily. It is a philosophy of care. So we are here to provide those services wherever a patient calls home. And we are just honored that we do have 2 hospice houses here in Iredell County to provide services for those that cannot be cared for at home. So we thank you so very much for listening today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mindy.
And I appreciate all of you, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on Life. Hospice and Palliative Care of Iredell County serves Iredell and surrounding communities. We provide care wherever a patient calls home and in our 2 hospice houses, the S. Mitchell Mack Hospice House in Mooresville and Gordon Hospice House in Statesville. We encourage you to reach out if you have any questions or need guidance regarding care for you or a loved one who is facing serious illness. Call our office at 704-873-4719 or visit our website at hoic.org.